So this video is going to be really cool. I think you're going to enjoy it. We're going to use Power Query to look through this list of data. But what I want to do is I want to extract only, say, the 5 best sales for each region. So we've got the region column here, and the region is only comprised of 5 regions. We've got the Southeast, the West, the Midwest, the West, and the Northeast. So I want a reduced table that only gives me one of each region, but the top 5 sales for each region, and I want the complete record for each of the top 5 sales. So starting with this table that has about 350 entries in it, I want to reduce it down to this table, where I get the top 5 sales for Midwest, the top 5 for the Northeast, the top 5 for the Southeast, top 5 for Southwest, and then finally the top 5 for the West. So I want it grouped by region, sorted alphabetically by region, and then within each region, the records should be sorted in descending order by sales. So my best sale to my worst sale. There are a lot of different ways to solve this problem in Power Query, but the way I'm going to show you, I think, may be unique and possibly easier than almost any way you've ever seen. Once we learn how to set up the basic filtering, then let's do something even more interesting. What if we could give the user an input interface where they could pick the method by which they want to group, like maybe by region, whether they want to pick the top N records or the bottom N records, and what that number is. So I might want to do the top 50, or I might want to do the top 3. But when I right-click refresh, I want to be able to see the top 3 regions, sorted by region, and then sub-sorted by sales. Notice I'm also getting rid of columns I'm not interested in, and I'm rearranging the columns I am interested in, because whatever they pick for the GroupBy strategy, I want that to be the first column. So right now, region is the first column, but if I pick state, right-click refresh, then I want the first column to be state. So we're sorted by that first column, and then secondarily sorted by sales. So let's start with the basic filter, then we'll build in the user interface and create the more flexible report. Make sure you download the test files from the link in the video description because it's going to have the starter files and all the solution files with the fully baked M-code solution. Here we have a proper Excel table. If I go to table design, we can see the name of this table is sales data. I'm going to go up to the data tab and use the from table range connector. This loads the table into Power Query. And for our first round, we just want to get, say, the top 5 sales for each region. So with the region selected, I'm going to go up to GroupBy and then switch to the advanced interface. We're going to group by region, and for the calculation fields for each group, you can actually pick anything you want here. So I could call this new column something like top 5 list, and I'll just sum up the sales field. Now all that's going to do is create a list of the 5 region names with their total sales. I don't want to lose the transaction level information because I'm going to need to extract that at the end. This way we can put all the data back. So I'm going to go to Add Aggregation. I'll create a new column called Details, and this one will use an all rows operation. This will nest all of the transactions per region into a nested table. We'll hit OK. And as you've probably seen before when using a GroupBy function, we've grouped by region, we've got the total sales for each region, and then a details column. If we click next to the word table, we can see that each of these nested tables is the full transactional information for that region. Now, I didn't really want to sum up the sales. What I wanted was the top 5 sales numbers. Now, going to the gear next to the GroupBy, in the operational dropdown, top 5 is not an option, bottom 5 is not an option. But I picked some to act as a placeholder just so I could get the wheels moving. Notice the gear, I'm pointing that out because in a second that gear is going to disappear. What we're going to do is go into the advanced editor and go into the M code. Now I'm going to add some blank lines in here to space things out, make it a little easier to read. And right here we can see the function that was used to aggregate the sales. That's a list.sum function. What we'll do is replace the sum function with a different aggregator. So I'm going to delete the sum, and then you can see from this list all of the other list-based functions that you could possibly use in lieu of something like a sum. Now, not all of these will work, but what we do have access to is a max n function. See, max is one of the listed functions from the dropdown, which gives you the largest sale. But we want the 5 largest sales, so we're going to use a max n function. Now, the max n function has 2 arguments. Sales is the column we're scanning to pick the top 5 from, but then we have to add a comma and give it the count. And this is the number of items we want to preserve, and I'm going to preserve 5. We'll hit done. And now those total sales have been replaced by lists. If you click next to the word list, here are the top 5 entries for Southeast, here are the top 5 for West, the top 5 for Midwest, etc. Now we know the top 5 sales numbers for each region. We're going to use this list to find the entries in each of these associated tables and only preserve the rows where the sales equals a number that's in the list. We don't need the region any longer, so I'm going to right-click remove that. Taking the first row as an example, let's take the list of these 5 numbers and locate them in the sales column of this table. So if one of those numbers from that associated list is in this sales column, I want to keep that row. So this will effectively take each of these tables and reduce them to a new set of tables that only has 5 rows per table. Let's go up to Add Column, Custom Column, and we'll call this new custom column Get N Records. Now the formula for this is going to be the strangest part. We're going to use the each keyword that will execute a table select rows function on the details field. So we want to walk through each table in that details column, and in order to compare each item from the related list to the sales field of the related table, we'll use a list contains function. Open parentheses. The first argument is the list that we're feeding it. That's going to be the top 5 list column, comma. The column we're comparing each of those list items to is the sales column of the nested table. Now, I can't see the sales column of the nested tables from this perspective, so I'll have to do a square bracket sales and expressly state it. Close parentheses for the list.contains and close parentheses for the select rows. Now, this actually is not going to work. The reason is the list.contains function doesn't understand that sales is coming from a nested table. So I have to find a way to feed the entire table into list.contains so it can then do a deeper search for that sales column. So the way I'm going to do this is right before the list.contains, I'm going to set up a variable, and I'm going to call it X. Now you can actually call this anything you want, but X is just very simple. Then I'm going to put an equal greater than, and this symbol indicates that whatever is in X is going to get fed into the list.contains when executed at a row by row level. Now X represents the table in the details column, so I need to go into that second argument of list.contains and type in X. Since X holds a table, X sales says go to this table and then the sales column. So select the rows from the details column using each table as a separate input for the list.contains function to scan the list called top 5 list, comparing each number in that list to the sales field of the input table. Let's hit OK. And now we have another set of nested tables. So here was the original list of the top 5 values. Here is the table of all the data for a particular region, in this case Southeast, but now here's that same table reduced to only the 5 matching sales that match the numbers in the list. Opening up my formula bar, this is the driving force that makes all of this work. It's a little strange looking, but it works quite well. Now the Get N Records column, each of these nested tables is the information that I need, so I no longer require the use of the top 5 list or the original details column that held every record from that region. So we'll take Get N Records and only keep this column. Now it's time to hit our Expand Table button. I'm going to extract every field from the table, not using table name prefixes, hit OK, and here we have the top 5 sales for each region. If I scroll over, we can see the 5 rows for Southeast. Here are the sales. West, Midwest, Southwest, Northeast. Now just to put a little polish on this, I could sort this by region in ascending order, and then sort this by sales in descending order. Let's go up to Home, close and load this back into Excel as a proper table, and here's our output, top 5 sales per region. Now the issue with this is if the user wants to do, say, the bottom 5, or instead of the top 5, maybe the top 10 or the top 50 or the top 1. Maybe they don't want to group it by region, they want to group it by state or by supplier or by product. Right now they'd have to right-click Edit, go into Power Query, and then start going through and reconfiguring these steps. Now remember the step where we grouped the rows? We had that gear, but the moment we went into the M code and we started making adjustments to the underlying logic, we lost that gear. So if you wanted to change the item count from, say, the top 5 to the top 1 sale, you'd have to alter the M code. Or instead of doing the max N function for the top sale, you could do the min N function for the worst sale. Now all this is very doable. I can click check, go to my last step, and if I scroll over, I can see I'm grouped by region and I'm getting the worst sale from each region. Going back to grouped rows, if I change that to 6, hit check, go to the last step, now it's the top 6 sales by region. And of course, if you wanted to do this by the top 6 by supplier, then that's a whole nother set of things you're going to have to change. Let's make this super easy by giving the user an interface to choose which category, top or bottom, and the value. In this starter file, I already have a query set up that brings in the parameters and processes them. Now, that's not the topic of this video, but if you'd like to know step by step how I did this, check out the video I made on faster and easier parameters. It's one of my most viewed videos on the channel. But just to show you the output of that query, I have a connection-only query here called parameters. I'm going to right-click Edit, and here we have a table that shows each of the categories, group by, top, bottom, and item count, and what the user selected. Now, when we go to reference either supplier, top, or 5, we'll have to point to this parameters query, the field, and then the record number of that field. And the record number for every one of these fields is 0. Even though this says 1, Power Query starts counting at 0. So this is the first record, the 0 record. I'll cancel this. Our data is over here on the sales sheet. It's a proper table named sales data. And we'll go up to data and choose from table range. So I've got the sales data query and the parameters query. So in sales data, I don't need data typing, so I'm going to delete that step. To build this dynamic solution, we'll start off by building it statically the way we just did. Then we'll go into the M code and replace the static entries with dynamic parameter entries. So like before, we'll go ahead and use region. I'll have that selected, go to group by, switch to the advanced mode, and I'll create a field called items. And we'll make this one of the offered aggregators like sum, and I'll use that to sum up the sales. We'll add an aggregation, and this will be the details. So this will have all of the information of each record for the associated region, so we'll switch that to all rows. So far this is just like before. We'll hit OK. So now we have each region, the total sales, and a series of nested tables. If I click next to the word table, pull this up, and I can see all of the entries associated with that specific region. Now, before we remove the region column, what I really needed to see in items was a list of the top 5 sales for each of those regions. Now, here's the full M code, but the only part we're really interested in is this piece right here. Currently, we're using a list.sum. I'm going to replace that sum with a maxN function. MaxN has 2 arguments. The first argument is the sales from the original tables, comma, and now the count. And I'll just put in a static 5. Any number will do at this point. We'll hit check, and now we have a column of lists. Next to each list are the top 5 sales values for that region. We don't need the original region column any longer. I'll delete that. Now it's time to add a column to write that formula to loop through each table, scanning the sales column to see if any of these values match the items from the associated list. So we'll go up to Add Column, Custom Column. We'll call this new column Get N Records. The formula, we're going to use an each to use a table select rows function, open parentheses. The first argument is where are all your tables. If I move this down, this is the details column, so we'll click details, comma. And now what's the condition? We're going to feed each table into a list.contains function, but we have to feed each table in as like a plug-in argument, a plug-in variable. So I'll create a variable called x. You can actually call this anything you want. I'll use the equals greater than sign to indicate that I'm taking this variable and feeding it into the next piece. The next piece being a list.contains function. Open parentheses. The list we're using to locate items is the items field, comma, and we're trying to scan the sales field that's in the nested table. But remember, we have to put the variable name in front of that column name. That way it knows, use the fed in table and scan its sales column. We'll go to the end, close parentheses for the list.contains, close the parentheses for the select rows. Hit OK, and here's where we started with our list of top 5 sales values, the nested tables that have all transactions for a particular region, reduced down to only the top 5 entries that match the sales to an entry in the associated list. Now we only need to keep the Get N Records column. So I'll right-click Remove Other Columns, and now it's time to extract the fields from these nested tables. To start with, I'll go ahead and extract everything. I don't want table name prefixing. And now we'll go to Region, Sort Ascending, and then go to Sales, Sort Descending. There are only certain columns from this table I want to keep, so I'm going to go up to Choose Columns, and the columns I want to keep are the column I grouped by, region, the date column, the sales representative, and the sales. I'll hit OK. We'll go up to Close and Load to, and I want to put this in as a table on an existing worksheet. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to put it right underneath the location where the user is going to form their query. Hit OK, and here's the output. Now this output is not tied to these user selections in any way. We need to go back into the query and replace our static declarations with dynamic parameter declarations. So we'll go back to sales data, right-click Edit. We have to go into the M code to start making changes to each of these statements. Doing it row by row is not difficult, but it might be easier just to do everything within the Advanced Editor. If you go to Advanced Editor, this is not pleasant to look at. So as I've shown in previous videos, I like to highlight all this code and copy it, Control-C, and then go to one of my favorite websites, PowerQueryFormatter.com. Here it's giving me an animation of just showing how this process works, but if you click in this main area, I'll click in this older text, do a Control-A and delete, and then Control-V and paste in the code from my current query. Click the Format button, and now I have beautiful code. I'll copy that, go back into Power Query, delete this old code, and replace it with the newly formatted code. So this is a lot easier to read. I like to even go in here and add blank lines between each step, just to make it even easier to read. Now we see each step isolated and easier to read. I'll hit done. Now the downside to this is, if you have a longer step like this grouped rows step, and your formula bar is only one row deep, you can't see the code very well. Even when you expand the formula bar, you may still have to scroll through the code to read it. So for me, after I've formatted code, I'm probably not going to be reading it from here any longer. I'm going to be reading it from the Advanced Editor. So let's start with this grouped rows step. We don't want to group by region every single time. So in place of this static entry for region, we're going to point to the parameters table. The column that holds the user's selection is called GroupBy, and we want the 0th record, so curly brace 0, close curly brace. That alteration alone will allow the user to change their grouping strategy. Now, because region was hard-coded into other locations in the M code, every place where it said region, we have to replace it with this parameters GroupBy 0 reference. Since I don't want to type that over and over, I'm going to highlight it and copy it, Control-C. And if I scroll down, you can see right here is another reference to hard-coded region. I'll replace that, Control-V, with the GroupBy parameter. Scrolling down, we can see in the sorted rows step, there's another hard-coded reference to region. We have to replace that with Control-V, parameters GroupBy parameter. Also, when I was selecting specific columns, region is a hard-coded selection, so that will be replaced, Control-V, with a reference to the GroupBy parameter. Let's see if this works. I'll hit done. If we look at the parameters argument, supplier is the current user's selection. Looking at the sales data query, supplier is the column that we've kept, sorted, and grouped by. If I close and load, now we see supplier. If I go into the user interface and I select something like state, come down to the query output, right-click refresh, now these are states. Before we do the code modification to choose between top and bottom, let's do the simpler one, which is just the item count. So whatever number they put here, that's the number of entries I want to retain for a given state, supplier, or region. Let's remember that item count is the name of the field in the parameters table. We'll go to sales data, right-click edit. Here we are back in Power Query. We'll go into the Advanced Editor. Right now there's a hard-coded 5 in that list.maxN function. Let's replace that with a reference to the parameters query, and the field name was item count. We need the first entry in that item count parameter query, so that's the 0th record. That's the only part of M code that references that item count parameter, so we can hit done. Everything still works. Let's close and load. If I change this to top 1, go to my query output, right-click refresh. Now I see the top sale for each state. But if I choose top 5, right-click refresh, now I see the top 5 for each state. Going back to the group by option, if I choose region, right-click refresh, top 5 by region. If I change this to 10, right-click refresh, top 10 by region. The only thing left to do is to tackle the user's choice for a top N or a bottom N option. This will be the trickiest part, not that it's complicated, but it's just going to involve probably the largest change in the M code. Let's go to the sales data query, right-click edit. Taking a peek back at the parameters query, the name of the column that holds that user's choice is called top bottom, and here's that 0th record entry. If I move this out of the way, the user is currently selected bottom. Bottom is the entry in the parameters query. Back to sales data, Advanced Editor. We have to replace this hard-coded list.maxN function with an if statement, because we want to say if the user picks top, we want a max n, but if the user picks bottom, we want a min n. The first thing I'm going to do is highlight all of this function because I'm going to use that again as a second act in the if statement. So I'm going to do a Control-C copy, go to the beginning, and I'll write if, and then we want to look at the parameters query to see if the field called top bottom, 0th row, is equal to the word top. If it is, then we will execute the list.maxN function. Else, meaning it's not top, it must be bottom, I'll do a Control V to paste that original formula of maxN, but I'll change it to a min_n. So if the user chose top for the top-bottom parameter, then execute a maxN function. Otherwise, execute a min_n function. Let's hit done to see if this works. Scrolling over, here are the top 10 entries for Midwest, and those numbers appear to be very low. I'll close and load. I'll change this from bottom to top, refresh the query, and now we're keeping the top 10 entries and the numbers are very high. I want to make one small adjustment to this, and that is whatever category the user picks, I want that to be the first column of the table, not in the middle. So let's go back to the query, sales data, right-click edit. And if we look at the remove other column step, it's actually executing a select column statement to tell us the columns I want to keep. And it's putting them in this order. Parameters grouped by 0 is what I want to be the first column. So I'm going to take this right here, I'm going to cut it, Control X, and then go in front of sales representative and paste it. Because that will just ensure that whatever the user picked as their grouping logic becomes the first column in my table. I'll hit check, and now we see region is first. Close and load. We now have the top 10 sales by region. If I were to change this to state and change this to 3, we'll go to the table, right-click refresh. Now I have the top 3 sales by state. State is the first column. Sales is sorted in descending order. If I choose bottom, go to the output, right-click refresh. Now I'm looking at the worst 3 sales by state. Let's change 3 things at once. We'll go for supplier, the top, and we'll do 6. Right-click refresh. Here are the top 6 sales by supplier. Now you know how to use the GroupBy feature to use an alternate aggregation function beyond the ones that are supplied by default, and then how to integrate parameters into that GroupBy to let the user choose exactly which field they want to group by, whether that's a top-bottom operation, and exactly how many items they wish to preserve. Don't forget to download the files for this lab. We've got the starter files so you can work through this with me, and also the solution files with the fully baked, beautified code. Thank you so much for watching. It was a longer video, but I do appreciate it. And remember, at BCTI, the learning never stops.